right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today I think is probably the most interesting of all the stories, and that is about Ramon Dino. In a recent Brazilian podcast, he talked about Urs Kalasinski switching to open and how that has now inspired him to eventually finally make the switch to open himself. Now, this is something that we've been speculating on for a while now because we know that Ramon's weight limit is only 227 pounds for classic physique. And we know that for the past however many years, it's been a few years now that Ramon has been, posting his body weight. And he's in really good shape. He's getting close to a show. And he's like in the 260s, in some cases in the high 260s. So like 40 pounds over his weight limit, but in incredible shape. And it kind of makes me wonder, like with what we saw from Ramon last year at the Classic Physique Olympia, where he dropped in placings a bit. He was no longer the runner-up, and he was just off at that Olympia, and it kind of makes me wonder if he struggled with the same thing that Urs struggled with that weight limit being what it was, and him being, him having so much muscle and so much size. Was it hard for him? Is it still hard for him to make that weight limit, and does his physique suffer as a result, leading him to being off? And I mean, we saw it happen with Ruff Diesel too that year at the Olympia where he was off. He said it was because he struggled to make weight. So here's the full clip of what Ramon said. Now this is interesting because it's like an AI translation. He actually said it in Portuguese, Spanish, but this video here is an AI translation of what Ramon said.
Force, he left the category and moved up to open. I thought it was really brave of him, something I would never do at any point. But after he went, it kind of made me want to do it too. I said, hey, if he thinks he can do it, then I can too, Me, I'm already sure that I'm going to do it, yes. Before, I wasn't so sure, but now I'm certain that open will be the next step. Of course, after...
That doesn't mean it's next year. It's just the next step.
Of course, I want to follow my plan to become classic champion and stay there for a few years, but soon enough, we'll be moving on to open. El Force salió de la categoría y se fue a la Open. Me pareció muy valiente de su parte, es algo que yo no haría en ningún momento, pero después de que él fue, como que también me dieron ganas. Yo dije, mira, si él piensa que puede, entonces yo también puedo, ¿entiendes? Ya estoy seguro que lo haré. Antes no estaba tan seguro, pero hoy estoy seguro de que el Open será el siguiente paso. Por supuesto después... No.
Es el siguiente paso.
Por supuesto que quiero hacer mi plan de convertirme en campeón del clásico y quedarme allí unos años, pero luego pronto iremos al abierto, por supuesto.
So it's interesting because I would say Ramon is probably the #1 guy in classic right now that I would say would do well in open, has the size to go to open. He does say in the clip that it's not something that's in his immediate future, but after seeing Urs do it, it's something that he's decided he is going to do eventually, but maybe not necessarily in the next year or so. And like I said in the previous video, I think that if Urs does really well here, I mean, imagine Urs wins one of these shows and gets to the 2025 Open Olympia right out of the gate, and then imagine he's like top 10 at the 2025 Olympia. I know this is a bit of a stretch and putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but imagine the precedent that would set for somebody like Ramon, inspiring him to go to open himself, which he already has just by making the switch, and we don't even know how Urs is going to do yet. And I think unlike Ramon, we haven't seen Urs really struggle making the weight yet, or at least it hasn't been super evident. His placings have been pretty consistent at the Olympia in classic physique. He's still winning shows outside of the Olympia. His physique still looks amazing. We haven't seen him coming off like we did with Ramon last year as a result, potentially, of that weight limit. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Of all the classic physique guys, or specifically, I guess, Urs and Ramon, which of the two do you think will have the best open bodybuilding career? Because I think it's worth pointing out again, like I've pointed out several times, it's a little bit different with classic switching to open. Somebody needs to really set the tone. Is that going to be Urs? Is it going to be Ramon? Because it's not a one-to-one transition like 212 to open is. It's different. So just because you're really good in classic doesn't necessarily mean that's going to translate to open bodybuilding the same way that it does with 212. A really good 212 guy or an Olympia champ like Derek Lunsford, for example, is able to switch to open and be top 2 at his first open Olympia ever because it's essentially a one-to-one transition. Same poses, same criteria, just with more muscle. That's not the case for classic, so I think it's a little bit more interesting to see a guy like Urs cross over to classic, or a guy like Ramon cross over from classic, rather, because it's not the same type of transition. And I mean, I think you need to look no further than Chris Bumstead at the Prague Pro last year. Chris Bumstead, I think without dispute, is the best classic physique athlete of all time. Won more Olympia titles than anybody else in classic physique. Dominant, big, imposing. At his open debut, he wasn't able to win that show. Martin Fitzwater won, a top 4 Olympian. And don't get me wrong, I think Chris looked great. I think Chris looked great as an open bodybuilder, but I think that just proves that point that classic is not a one-to-one transition to open bodybuilding. And it's going to be very interesting to see how somebody like Urs, one of the top classic guys, does in a lineup like this. Granted, it's a little bit different than Chris Bumstead in Prague because you had Martin in that lineup, and Martin was a top 4 Olympian. You almost don't have any, I don't think you do have any top Olympians in this upcoming Italy Pro lineup or the Germany Pro lineup. Granted, we don't have the full competitor list officially published yet. We'll get that on Monday. But so far, there doesn't appear to be any very clear open frontrunners at this show. Like, there's nobody that's way ahead of the pack. Maybe you could argue Theo Leguerrier is probably one of the heavier hitters in this lineup, having, won 3 pro shows. He's been to the Olympia before. Not something you can say about a lot of the guys in the lineup that we know about so far for Italy. I'll go ahead and throw Theo's latest update from today in here as well, this side tricep here. Great side shot for Theo. Like I said, he's one of the few guys that, has recently qualified for and competed at the Olympia. Not something you can say about most of the guys in this lineup. And again, we don't have the full lineup yet, but I think that makes Theo the front runner. But anyway, my point is, for somebody like Urs, it's a little bit different than Chris Bumstead's open debut because there's no Martin Fitzwater here. There's no first call-out Olympians in this lineup. So there is a chance that Urs could win this show. And I think, does that also set the precedent now that we've got Ramon coming out and saying, yes, open is a possibility. Not just a possibility. He says that's his intention. Maybe Mike Sommerfeld also joins that conversation of switching to 212 or open. And does it also open up the door for maybe another conversation about increasing the classic physique weight limits again? If you're starting to see a lot of, or the majority of, the top guys in classic, these first call-out guys like Ramon, like Urs, start to jump ship because they're struggling to make weight, does that maybe push the league to increase the weight limits again to try to keep some of those superstars in classic? Because up until this point, we haven't really seen it done successfully yet. Chris Bumstead kind of did it as like a last hurrah bucket list, something he wanted to check off his list type of thing. It wasn't, okay, I'm an open guy now. It's just he wanted to do an open show before he retired, and that's what he did. We haven't really seen a mass exodus of classic physique guys go to open, but, if Urs does this and does well, does that open the floodgates to maybe other guys that are struggling to make weight in classic, top guys? Do they come over to open and they all start doing well and they all start leaving classic? Because again, with what we see from 212, seeing guys like Derek come over, seeing guys like Hadi come over, Bonac, I think those are the 3 best examples of guys coming from 212. There is a massive incentive financially to do that. 212 is great. I enjoy 212, but financially, for a guy like Derek to come over and even at his first open Olympia, he's winning multiple years worth of prize money compared to winning the 212 Olympia just off of 1 second place placing. And the prize money's about the same in classic. So there is a real incentive for these classic guys to not only, if they're struggling to make weight, not only to bring their best possible physique to the stage if open allows them to express their physique to its maximum potential, but also there is a significant financial incentive to these classic guys switching. So it's kind of a double threat there, that they're suffering because of the weight limits, and there's a financial incentive to not be confined in classic physique if they switch to open. And as we look at these, this series of the latest 2 updates from both Mike Sommerfeld and Ruff Diesel at about 6 weeks out from the Olympia now, I mean, just consider the impact that this has on the classic physique division. It's already a huge blow that Chris Bumstead is gone. There's no denying that is going to permanently change the classic physique division. But imagine that within the next year, maybe next year's Olympia, Ramon switches to open. So now Urs, Ramon, and Chris are all potentially removed from classic physique for next year's Olympia. To me, those are the three biggest names in classic. And next year, they could be gone. Well, Chris and Urs already are, but imagine Ramon leaves too. So that's what I mean when I say, does this open the door to a conversation of increasing weight limits, changing something to try to keep people in classic, maybe even increasing the prize money, some kind of incentive for people to stay in classic physique. Because realistically, if Ramon also jumps ship, let's say next year, for example, those are the three biggest names to me in classic physique. And you would have Mike and Ruff Diesel left, and those are big names as well. But I do think eventually Mike will probably switch to either 212 or open, just given his size. And so in the next few years, I think you're going to completely see that landscape of classic totally change. That first call-out group of guys is not going to be the same 2-3 years from now, or even close to the same. And maybe that's not even a bad thing. I'm just saying, these guys that we're used to seeing, these guys that we're used to talking about, especially with Chris being gone, if Ramon leaves, without those three guys, we're looking at a very different division. And again, as you look at these two physique updates here of both, Mike and Terrence, which one of these guys do you think would remain on top? Do you think, maybe it's Mike's game now, maybe it's his title, maybe he's becomes a dominant champ? He is certainly on paper that guy, winning the Arnold, second at the Olympia last year. If Ramon leaves, maybe Mike becomes the new Chris Bumstead and wins a couple titles. Or maybe Terrence steps back up into that position because Terrence wasn't at the Olympia last year. Honestly, we don't yet know how Terrence would do against this version of Mike's physique because he wasn't at the Olympia, he wasn't at the Arnold. Maybe Terrence is the wild card factor here. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Now, the final story that I've got for you guys today, the latest physique update 6 weeks out from GoodVito, Vitaly Ugolnikov. I think one of the bigger wild cards at this year's Olympia as far as Olympia debuts, rookie year. I guess not technically his rookie year, but Olympia debut. And I take some of these updates from GoodVito with a little bit of a grain of salt because he posts his strongest shots. I would say the front double bicep is arguably his best shot. And he posts a lot of the front double, most muscular, his two bread and butter poses. It's worth pointing out he's not as strong from the back, but when you see an update like this of the front double bicep, it's hard not to imagine him being a first call-out guy at the Olympia because you're not really, he has one of the best front doubles in the league, but you're not really thinking about the back shots or the side shots, which he's good in those too, just lacks a little bit of fullness in the chest in those shots. Legs look absolutely ridiculous, totally carved up, a ton of separation, a ton of detail. His taper looks good in this pose. Just an overall great X frame in this shot. And it's genuinely hard to say where he's going to land in the Olympia lineup this year. I still think he will be higher wherever he lands. I think between him and Rubiel, the two guys making their Olympia debut, the two young up-and-coming freaks, I think wherever GoodVito lands, it will be higher than Rubiel, just on the merit of the leg separation alone. If you're going to compare who has big, freaky legs, I think GoodVito takes that home all day. With a much better structure, much better conditioning, both of them seem to still struggle with their posing a bit. Both of them still seem to struggle with the back shots. I think GoodVito comes out on top 9 times out of 10 versus Nexzilla. But that's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.